This podcast is intended to provide information for educational purposes only and to serve as a starting point for you to have a conversation with your personal physician. Nothing stated on this podcast should be considered medical advice. Consult with your physician before undertaking or changing any treatment plan.
The idea that you're going to eat one less piece of pizza with your GLP-1 medication and that's your weight loss plan, that's not a solid, lasting, long-term plan. Nutrition alone isn't a great treatment for someone who's 400 pounds, but neither is GLP-1 medication alone, and neither is bariatric surgery alone.
All right, welcome back to the Pound of Cure Weight Loss Podcast. We are here. I'm excited. Look at what we got for you.
I know. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, your wife made this.
My wife made this.
She's so talented.
I know, she really is. And I don't think when she made it, it wasn't originally for a podcast background. And I think as we put this together, we're like, why haven't we been doing this all along?
It's what it always was meant for.
Yeah. Well, this kind of leads into our title for today, which is protein or produce for weight loss. Certainly something we talk about a lot.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, it's not really a binary answer, is it?
Just like so many things in nutrition, there's so much gray area and nuance, which is why it's so great that we have this podcast and this platform so we can actually dive into these topics and give the explanation that they deserve, because it's so dang hard to do it in a 60-second clip for you on social media.
Yeah, that's not really my forte, is summing up something in 30 seconds. So let's move into our question and answer session. So we'll hear from Sierra. We've got our first question out there, and this is coming from Philip. So Sierra, what do we have?
First question is from Philip from our YouTube video, Should I Have Weight Loss Surgery? I watched a number of videos before my gastric bypass last year. At a year post-op, I can say he is almost 100% spot on. The only thing I completely disagree with is not eating more red meat, chicken, and fish. A lot of us who get bariatric surgery have that cracked out look around 8 months. Meat and strength training, especially in women, is important. It helps build muscles and help your overall health.
So Zoe, what do you think about this? Is meat and strength training important? And is there a difference between women and men?
So absolutely, strength training is important. And we've talked about that a lot. Right?
Yeah.
And yes, protein is important for muscle protein synthesis and building muscle, but it does not have to come from meat. It can come from beans and Greek yogurt, and yes, in moderation, meat and chicken and those sorts of other animal-based protein sources, but we really do lean on the side of plant-based protein.
Yeah. I think anybody who challenges the idea that you need meat in order to build muscle should just Google vegan bodybuilders.
Yeah, I know one.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you can build a tremendous amount of muscle. Another thing I think that's important is, like, think about the largest animals out there. Elephants, hippopotamuses, rhinoceroses. They are all plant-based. They eat only plant-based. Well, remember the dinosaurs? Well, we don't remember them, but remember learning about dinosaurs? The brontosaurus was like the gigantic one that was, 50, 60
With a
feet
big
long.
neck.
Right, yeah. They were plant-based. It was the T-Rex, they were the meat eaters. They're a little bit smaller and more agile. So you can absolutely build plenty of muscle with plants. Mm-hmm. I think that, that they call it, I don't know I like that term, but I think it's very descriptive, this cracked out look. We see some of that with rapid weight loss. I think you can see it from either the GLP-1 meds or the surgery. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? What's causing that? What can you do to prevent that?
Absolutely. And, like you said, even though we don't love the phrasing of it,
right. We all understand what they mean.
It is.
Right?
Yeah. So what we really need to focus on during that kind of fast weight loss phase, or that honeymoon period, whether it is after surgery or after a GLP-1, is that protein, and really preserving muscle tissue. So it's not only eating enough protein, but it's also creating that stimulus to your muscles to not only just maintain them, but maybe build a little muscle as well in that weight loss phase so that the weight that they're losing comes primarily from fat and not from muscle.
Right. I think, that look that they're talking about, to me, that's malnutrition.
I was going to say, yep.
That's really what we're seeing. So
the temples, the clavicle.
So in my mind, there's three different types of malnutrition, right? There's protein malnutrition, not getting enough protein in. And that's where, again, either a whey protein or other supplement, or a plant-based protein like beans and nuts, or animal protein, chicken, fish, beef. That's how you kind of counteract that protein malnutrition. And then there's the vitamin B12, the thiamine, the folate, your micronutrients. That generally taking your vitamin is going to cover that. I think in patients who are able to eat comfortably and are taking a bariatric vitamin, and I think bariatric vitamins are a good idea for GLP-1 patients, especially if they're losing weight rapidly, that you're going to cover that with that. But then there's this third kind of component that not as many people talk about, and that's the phytonutrients. And the phytonutrients are these kind of magical compounds found in plants only. Phyto means plant. And these are things like resveratrol and the lecithins and all of these other compounds that help aid in metabolism, and that you're going to get from plants. So in my mind, again, not so simple, especially in that rapid weight loss phase. Protein malnutrition is a real threat in those first few months when you're losing weight rapidly. But after that, you really have to start bringing in the plants if you're able to, and that can help you with that phytonutrient malnutrition. So yeah, unfortunately, it's not just this one thing. It really is a very comprehensive and thoughtful approach where you're bringing in animal protein, but you're also bringing in the plants as much as possible.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So our next question.
Next question comes from Lucy from our website. I'm struggling to decide between a sleeve and a gastric bypass. What factors are the most important when making this decision?
Okay, so this is a question I've worked with, I don't know, probably about 3,000 or 4,000, probably more, probably 5,000 patients. I've kind of gone through this. How do I decide? Should I have a sleeve or a bypass? And there really are a lot of factors. It's a complicated decision. We do have a quiz on our website. You can plug all your information in, and it'll give you a lot of it'll give you actually an assessment of which surgery may be a better choice. Of course, don't consider it a formal recommendation. It's kind of an educational jumping off point. But I think when we look at it, there's a bunch of different factors. I'll just kind of list through them. The first is starting BMI, right? If you have a lot of weight to lose, then you should choose a gastric bypass over a sleeve. You just get more weight loss from it. The GLP-1s have changed this a little bit. And I think access to GLP-1 meds is another really important factor. And I think if you're watching this podcast, you're starting to come to the conclusion that we're not going to be able to get these meds affordably for a minimum of 5 more years, minimum. And so you have to be committed to getting through these next 5 years at least. It might be 10, honestly. It could be, at least it's going to be 8, I think, until we can get them affordably. So if you can't get these meds, a sleeve where we're seeing 30, 40, 50% of patients requiring GLP-1 meds for weight maintenance or adequate weight loss might not be a good choice. And so I kind of look at the starting BMI and the access to GLP-1 meds, and now we're getting more people on these meds before surgery and seeing what their response is and kind of putting all those things together to help determine, hey, if you're a great responder to GLP-1s, maybe we can do a sleeve. If you don't have a great response to GLP-1s, we should definitely be going with a bypass. Diabetes as well. And this also impacts your access to GLP-1 meds because diabetics have a lot more access to the meds than non-diabetics. So I think if you're a diabetic, you're going to lose less weight from either surgery. A gastric bypass is a more effective diabetes treatment as well. Also, things like weight gaining meds. If you're taking medications, and we've talked about that a lot and how it's important to try to get off them if you can, but you can't always. If you're going to be dependent on weight gaining meds, again, don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Don't choose a sleeve when you need all the weight loss help you can get to be successful. Your past surgical history, if you've had a complicated abdominal history, surgical history, like lots of big hernias, multiple bowel resections, things along those lines, then then choosing a sleeve is a much better option because we're not going to have to go in there and do that work. And so that's going to be safe. And then also heartburn. Gastric bypass is essentially curative for heartburn, where with a sleeve, it can worsen heartburn. So that's another option. I think the last two pieces are alcohol and smoking. If you are a heavy alcohol consumer, you have to be very careful choosing a gastric bypass. We see alcoholism after a gastric bypass surgery,
which we discussed in one of our previous episodes.
Yeah.
How gastric bypass can ruin your life.
Yes, and it can, and we have seen that. And so we do try to, if you're a heavy alcohol consumer and you want to have a gastric bypass, I think a commitment to avoiding alcohol altogether after surgery. And then finally, smoking. Smoking's a hard no after a gastric bypass. And so we put all these things together and we help patients make a choice. But the truth is I think even though we have this great calculator, it's a great jumping off point. To me, this is a way for you to sit down with your provider, with your surgeon, and make this decision, because it really is a complicated decision.
Again, so much nuance.
So much nuance. Yeah. All right. What's our next question here, Sierra?
Next question comes from one of Zoe's one-on-ones. I follow a lot of social media accounts and influencers online, and there are so many different supplements they talk about that it makes me confused about if I am taking the right things or if I need to be taking more. For example, I recently heard this woman talking about gut healthy GLP-1 booster. Is this something I need?
All right, so this is actually something, not necessarily this specific supplement, but just supplements in general. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
I mean, yes.
And we've talked about health halos. We've talked about different products jumping on the GLP-1 train, if you will, as a money grab. So this specific product, and we might be able to pop it up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. It's the Gut Healthy GLP-1 Booster. Great marketing.
Great.
It's very targeted, right? She was like, oh my gosh, do I need this? It's fiber. It's basically Metamucil. But do you know what else? It's specifically resistant starch. Do you know where we get resistant starch? Produce, beans.
Yeah.
So our whole philosophy of eating whole, real, unprocessed foods, primarily produce, guess what? You don't need to spend your money on a fancy, what is this? $26 for how many servings? 15 servings. So it's what, $1.50 a serving, basically.
Yeah.
You can get so many more benefits.
Yeah.
By eating the fiber-rich produce by itself. You're also getting satiety. You're getting all of those other benefits instead of just spending your money on a product. So my main recommendation when we're thinking about supplements is, first, you can't out-supplement a bad diet.
Nope.
And second, you have to have a very discerning eye, especially with these products that are targeted specifically to a pain point, if you will, or a very niche demographic. Now, specifically the GLP-1s, or, we were talking about those freezer meals, right? So yeah, just be careful, and no, you do not need to go and spend $30 on a fiber powder when you could be eating the beans and vegetables instead.
Yeah. I think it's important to understand, like, where did this thing come from? Here's this product, right? Let's walk through how that made it onto Amazon. So somebody said, hey, listen, I want to make some money. Right? That's where it started. There's no question it started with, I would like to make money. And so they said, well, let me think about this. What's big? They did a little bit of market research. Honestly, you don't need to do much market research to know that these GLP-1 meds are big right now. Mm-hmm. Then they went out and said, well, let me think about this. They did a little bit of Googling, maybe 2-3 hours. I would bet anything there wasn't even a dietitian or a medical professional involved in this. And they said, we think fiber is going to be good. So they went out to these factories and said, hey, who makes some fiber for us? Anybody out there making fiber? Oh, I make fiber. I sell it as Metamucil. I sell it as Citracel. I sell it as this other stuff. And we're selling that for $7-8. Well, I'm going to market this. I'm going to hire a fancy graphic designer. I'm going to put a new label as a GLP-1 gut booster. And I'm going to go to the factory, the same one that sells the exact same product. I'm going to take the bag and I'm going to put it in a new box. So you're paying literally $7 probably for the product and $19 for the box. Yeah. And that's how these products come to be. And so all you have to do is look at the active ingredient and then Google that active ingredient and purchase it from someplace. It will be a third the price most likely, and you can get the same thing. We're big believers in the placebo effect. We've talked about this, but what's the rule about the placebo effect?
Is that it works.
Get it at a good price. If you're gonna use a placebo effect, get it at a good price. And I think, I don't know that there's any evidence that these enhance post-operative weight loss, post-GLP-1 weight loss. Whether there is or there isn't, if you want to try it, just find it as cheaply as possible. So,
and actually, we recently did a post on social media, or I was kind of responding to a very similar product. This gentleman was reviewing it, and it was putting this fiber powder into the water bottle and drinking it before he ate his pizza, because then he won't digest his pizza. And so just another example of everything that's out there to try to get your money.
Absolutely. All right. We have one more question, Sierra. What's our last question for the episode?
Our last question comes from our YouTube video on episode 29, Wegovy for the long run. This is from Portal Creek. I stalled at 2.4, so I went back down to 0.5 and am following Zoe's suggestions on the podcast for nutrition and kickstarting. I came in at almost 400 pounds and stalled for months at 335. Ironically, for me, going down in dosage did the trick. Is this a good strategy for breaking a plateau?
All right. So Zoe, you're talking to a lot of people who are using GLP-1 meds. What kind of nutritional advice are you giving? We're seeing stalls. We see stalls with GLP-1s, just like we see stalls with bariatric surgery. What are you advising people to do to help get through a stall?
So there are a couple different avenues that we talk through, right? One is stalls are going to happen.
Yep.
And we need to remain consistent with those habits that you know you can control. When you're putting all of your energy and focus on that dang scale not going down and why am I not losing weight, and you're on that scale every day and that's all you can focus on, of course it's not going to go down. Instead, we want to transfer that energy into controlling what you can actually control and making sure you get your hydration and making sure you get your produce and your protein and your walk, all of those habits, right? And oftentimes when we take that energy away from focusing on the scale, it helps get through it a little bit easier. So that's kind of my first nugget. But then, of course, we want to take a bird's eye view. I always like to say, zoom out, look objectively at what's going on. Have you let some things slip? Have you maybe had a little bit more treats than normal and that's maybe impacting your progress? Right. Can we make small but meaningful tweaks to what you're currently doing to help push through that? And then again, if everything's, quote, quote, perfect, which there is no such thing, right? Yeah. But that's when we can maybe dig a little deeper and amplify things. And it might be time for a dose increase. Right.
I think what happened with this person, I think that some interesting things here. First of all, started 400 pounds. They got down to 335. So that's 65 pounds of weight loss. So Wegovy at the max dose, the average weight loss is about 16%. So you take 15% of 400 pounds and that's, 60 pounds. So they're right at that 15% total body weight loss. So the first thing I'm seeing is I think this person had the expected amount of weight loss after Wegovy. And we know there's variability. We know some people lose more. We know some people lose less. It looks to me like this person stalled right at that 15 or 16% point, which to me says that the medication has done as much as it can. They then lowered the dose all the way back down to 0.5. So first of all, I don't think that is a reasonable strategy. Once you get on the dose, you kind of work the dose, you stay on that dose. These are long-term medications. To some degree, playing around with your GLP-1 dose is like playing around with your blood pressure dose, right? You got to stay on the same dose over the long run, and that controls your blood pressure medicine. And so we don't advocate going back down to 0.5 milligrams or restarting it. What I think happened is when they went down to 0.5, they also paired it with improved nutrition. And that, to me, shows the importance and necessity of really good nutrition with these meds. And that's how you optimize weight loss. The idea that you're going to eat one less piece of pizza with your GLP-1 medication, and that's your weight loss plan, that's not a solid, lasting, long-term plan. Nutrition alone isn't a great treatment for someone who's 400 pounds, but neither is GLP-1 medication alone, and neither is bariatric surgery alone. You need all of these things. You need the nutrition. You need the exercise if it's safe. You need the GLP-1, and you probably need the surgery in this case. I think when I meet with a 400-pound patient, especially if their goal is, hey, I want to get down to 200 pounds, that's going to take everything we've got. It's going to take nutrition, it's going to take surgery, it's going to take the medications, it's going to take all of these things together. And so I think we can kind of play around with it and rearrange things, but my sense is in this person, we're seeing the amount of weight that we're going to see from GLP-1s. They got a little bit extra with some nutrition, and it's probably time to start thinking about bariatric surgery.
Yeah.
All right, so that wraps up this episode.
Yeah. Hey, we want to hear, if you're watching on YouTube, what do you think of our new background,
Absolutely.
our new setup? We're excited about it. We want to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely. We're on social media, on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, and you can check out our website, poundtocureweightloss.com. We're putting out a lot of new content on our website as well. So keep in touch, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.